The cabin lights of Flight 817 cast a warm amber glow across the leather seats, reflecting off polished wood panels and brass fixtures. First class was designed to be a sanctuary, a place where the wealthy could escape the chaos of the world below. But on this particular evening, somewhere between Chicago and Miami, that sanctuary became a cage. Two boys sat motionless in seats 2A and 2B. They were 10 years old, identical twins named Marcus and Michael Carter. Their matching navy hoodies were pulled tight around their faces, as if they could disappear into the fabric. Their eyes, wide, brown, exhausted, stared at the seat-back screens in front of them. Though neither boy was watching anything, they were just trying to be invisible. 15 feet away, near the galley partition, stood a woman who had decided they shouldn't exist. Her name was Patricia Kendrick. She was 52 years old with hair the color of champagne frost and a smile she saved for people who looked like they belonged. She'd worked for Skywing Airlines for 23 years, and in that time, she'd developed a very particular view of the world. To Patricia, first class wasn't just a seating section. It was a statement, a hierarchy, a line between them and us. And these two boys, in her estimation, were firmly on the wrong side of that line. Before we go deeper into this case, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. The hum of the engines was steady, rhythmic. Most passengers had settled in, some reading, some sipping cocktails, some already asleep under cashmere blankets. The flight attendants moved through the aisles with practiced grace, offering warm nuts in ceramic bowls and refilling champagne flutes before they were even empty. But Patricia Kendrick stood still, arms crossed, watching the Carter twins with the intensity of a hawk circling prey. She'd been watching them since the moment they boarded. When they reached the door, she'd stepped into their path. "Can I help you?" she'd asked, her voice sharp. Marcus had looked up at her with quiet confusion. "We're in 2A and 2B, ma'am." She'd laughed. Actually laughed. A short, brittle sound. "Sweetie, unaccompanied minors board through the main cabin. You're looking for Coach. It's back that way." "No, ma'am," Michael had said softly, pulling 2 boarding passes from his hoodie pocket. Patricia had snatched them from him. Her eyes scanned the paper. Carter, Marcus, Carter, Michael. Seats 2A and 2B. Full fare. Upgraded cabin. Confirmed. The tickets were legitimate. For a moment she'd stood there, her mind racing. These boys didn't fit. Someone must have made a mistake. She'd handed the tickets back with a forced smile. "Fine, but I need you to understand something." She leaned in close. "This isn't a playground. You sit quietly. You don't press the call button. You don't bother the other passengers. And if I hear one complaint, I will have security meet this plane when we land. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," both boys had whispered. They'd scurried to their seats, and Patricia had been watching them ever since. The first hour of the flight passed in uneasy silence. Marcus sat closest to the window, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. Michael sat in the aisle seat, gripping the armrests, trying to control his breathing. He had asthma, and stress made it worse. The tightness in his chest was already starting to build. A soft chime sounded. The seatbelt sign flickered off. Michael reached for the call button, considering. He needed water. His throat was dry, and he could feel the familiar rasp in his lungs. But before he could press it, a shadow fell over him. Patricia stood in the aisle, looking down with cold eyes. "What do you need?" she asked flatly. Could I have some water, please?" Patricia stared at him, then she smiled. Thin, humorless smile. "Water service will begin shortly, for everyone." And she walked away. 20 minutes later, she returned with the beverage cart. She stopped at other seats, offering wine, champagne, warm towels. Then she reached row 2. "Beverages?" she asked, her voice clipped. "Yes, please," Marcus said quickly. "Could we both have water?" "We have Perrier, San Pellegrino, Evian. Which would you prefer?" Marcus blinked. Just regular water?" Patricia sighed. "We don't serve regular water in first class. We have premium bottled water. If you can't decide, I'll move on." "San Pellegrino is fine, ma'am." "Please," Michael's voice cracked. Patricia pulled out 2 bottles and placed them on the armrest just out of easy reach. "There, anything else?" "No, ma'am, thank you." Patricia leaned down, her face inches from Marcus's. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "So sit there. Be quiet. And don't you dare ask me for another thing." Michael's breathing was getting worse. He reached for the water bottle. His fingers brushed it. It tipped, fell, rolled under the seat. Michael closed his eyes, fighting back tears. Marcus squeezed his brother's hand. "It's okay. We'll be okay." But neither of them believed it. The cabin lights dimmed. Evening service began. Most of the other flight attendants were toward the back, serving the main cabin. Patricia was nowhere in sight. Michael's breathing had become audible, a faint wheeze with each inhale. His lips had a grayish tint. Marcus knew the signs. "Michael, you need your inhaler, now." "It's in my backpack." Their backpacks were in the overhead compartment. Marcus stood up and reached for the latch. It clicked. The door swung open, and Patricia appeared. "What do you think you're doing?" Marcus froze. "I need to get my brother's medicine. He has asthma and—" "Sit down." "But he needs—" "I said sit down." Patricia stepped closer, blocking the aisle. "You were told not to cause disruptions, and now you're standing up, opening bins, making noise while other passengers are trying to rest." "Please," Marcus' voice cracked. "He can't breathe right. He just needs his inhaler." Patricia glanced at Michael. The boy was hunched over, breathing labored, face pale. For a brief flicker, something like concern crossed her features. But then it vanished. "If he's having a medical emergency, then we'll need to divert the plane. Land early. File an incident report. Is that what you want?" "No, he just needs his inhaler." "Well, if he can wait until we land, then it's not an emergency, is it? So sit down, stop making a scene, and I'll bring you your backpack when I have time." "When will that be?" "When I'm not busy. Now, sit down." Marcus looked at his brother. Michael's eyes were glassy. His chest was heaving. Marcus sat down. Patricia closed the overhead bin with a decisive snap and walked away. 15 minutes passed. Michael's condition was deteriorating. The wheeze had become a rattle. He was leaning forward, elbows on his knees, trying to force air into lungs that felt like they were closing. Marcus pressed the call button. Ding. Patricia appeared almost instantly. "Yes?" "Please, my brother really needs his medicine. Please. I'm not trying to cause trouble. He just needs his inhaler." Patricia looked at Michael. Then she reached up and opened the overhead bin herself. She pulled out Michael's backpack. Marcus felt a flood of relief, but Patricia didn't hand over the bag. Instead, she unzipped it. "Let's see what we have here," she said loudly enough that nearby passengers were starting to glance over. She began pulling items out. "Snacks, headphones, a tablet. Is this yours, or did you steal it?" "It's his," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "Please, just give him his inhaler." Patricia continued rummaging. "Clothes, more snacks, a phone. 10 years old and you have a phone? Must be nice." "Please." "Ah." Patricia pulled out the inhaler. She held it up to the light. "Is this it? This little thing?" "Yes," Michael gasped. "Please." Patricia looked at him, looked at the inhaler, looked at Marcus. Then she smiled. "You know, I'm not a doctor. I can't administer medication without proper authorization." For all I know, this could be expired, or it could belong to someone else. It's his. Marcus was standing now, his voice rising. His name is on it. Several passengers were staring. A woman in 3C had put down her book. The businessman in 1A had removed his headphones. Young man, I need you to lower your voice and sit down. If you continue to be disruptive, I will have no choice but to notify the captain. He can't breathe. Can't you see that? He can't breathe. Michael was doubled over, his breath coming in short gasps. His lips were turning blue. A male passenger in 5A stood up. Ma'am, that kid needs help. Give him the damn inhaler. Patricia turned to face him. Sir, I appreciate your concern, but I am trained in medical protocols, and I assure you I have the situation under control. You don't look like you have anything under control. You look like you're torturing a child. Patricia's face flushed red. Sir, return to your seat immediately. Another passenger spoke up. This is insane. Just give the boy his medicine. The cabin was no longer quiet. Voices overlapped, some demanding Patricia help Michael, others muttering about the disruption, a few reaching for phones to record. And through it all, Michael sat gasping. Patricia stood in the center of the chaos, holding the inhaler like a weapon. Then she turned and walked back to the galley, taking the inhaler with her. Marcus lunged after her, but a male flight attendant stepped into his path, catching him by the shoulders. Hey, calm down, buddy. She took his inhaler. He's going to die. The flight attendant, his name tag read James, looked over at Michael and his expression changed. Oh, Jesus! He rushed to Michael's side. Hey, buddy, can you hear me? Michael nodded weakly. James pressed the call button. Patricia, I need that inhaler up here, now. No response. James pressed it again. Patricia, this is not a game. Bring the inhaler, now. Still nothing. James looked at Marcus. Where did she go? The galley. James strode toward the galley, his jaw set. They found Patricia standing near the coffee maker, calmly preparing mints. The inhaler sat on the counter beside her. Patricia, James said, his voice low and dangerous. What the hell are you doing? My job. These boys have been disruptive since they boarded. I am documenting the incident. That kid is having an asthma attack. He's exaggerating for attention. James stared at her. Are you serious right now? I know when someone is genuinely in distress and when they're manipulating the situation. He's 10 years old. James grabbed the inhaler. Patricia's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. Put that back. Let go of me. That is airline property until we land. It's not airline property, it's his medicine. James wrenched free and shoved past her. He returned to Michael and knelt down. Here, buddy, slow breath in. Hold it. Good. Again. Michael took 2 puffs, then 3. Gradually, color began returning to his face. His breathing started to slow. James stood and faced Patricia. You need to get off this flight. When we land, you need to turn in your wings, because what you just did was criminal. Patricia's eyes narrowed. You have no idea who you're talking to. I know exactly who I'm talking to. A flight attendant who just refused medical care to a child. Excuse me? Everyone turned. The businessman from 1A was standing. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with dark skin and graying temples. He wore an expensive suit, but his tie was loosened. I've been listening to this entire exchange, he said calmly. And I think there's something you should know. Patricia crossed her arms. And what's that, sir? The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Patricia. She glanced at it. Her face went pale. The card read, Daniel Westbrook, CEO, Skywing Airlines. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I rid every single one. For a moment, the entire cabin held its breath. Patricia stared at the card as if it were written in a language she couldn't comprehend. You're Daniel Westbrook, and those two boys you've been tormenting for the past 2 hours? They're my sons. The silence was suffocating. Patricia's hands trembled. Mr. Westbrook, they didn't say. Didn't say what? Didn't announce that their father was the CEO of this airline? Is that a requirement now? No, sir, You just what? You just assumed that 2 black children traveling alone in first class must be in the wrong place? You just decided they didn't deserve water? You just watched my son suffocate and chose to walk away? Patricia's mouth worked soundlessly. Daniel turned to his sons. Marcus had his arm around Michael, who was still breathing heavily, but recovering. Are you boys okay? Yeah, Dad, Marcus said, his voice shaking. We're okay now. Daniel nodded. Then he turned back to Patricia. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return to the galley. You're going to stay there for the remainder of this flight. When we land, you will be met by security and escorted off this aircraft. And then you will be formally terminated. Patricia's eyes widened. Mr. Westbrook, please. I've worked for Skywing for 23 years. Then you should have known better. I have a mortgage. I have bills. I can't just lose my job because of a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Daniel's voice rose. You withheld life-saving medication from a child having an asthma attack. You humiliated my sons. You created a hostile environment based on nothing more than your own prejudices. That's not a misunderstanding. That's malice. Tears streamed down Patricia's face. Please, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. What I want is for you to never have the opportunity to do this to another child again. He turned to James. Can you handle the rest of the service? Absolutely, sir. Good. Daniel looked at Patricia one last time. Get out of my sight. Patricia stumbled backward, then fled to the galley. Several passengers broke into applause. Daniel crossed the aisle and knelt beside his sons. Come here. Both boys fell into his arms. He held them tight. I'm sorry. I should have been up here with you. I thought you'd be safe. It's not your fault, Dad, Michael said. It is. I put you in first class because I wanted you to be comfortable. Marcus pulled back. Why does she hate us so much? We didn't do anything to her. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Some people are so afraid of the world changing that they try to hold on to power the only way they know how, by hurting others, by deciding who belongs and who doesn't. It's not about you, Marcus. It never was. But she hurt Michael. I know, and she's going to face consequences for that. I promise. Daniel settled into the empty seat beside Marcus. I built this airline from the ground up. 15 years ago, it was just me and 3 planes. Now we have routes to 47 countries, 5,000 employees. He paused. And yet we still have people like Patricia Kendrick working for us. People who think their job is to gatekeep instead of serve. Are you going to fire her? Marcus asked. Yes. Is that enough? Daniel was quiet. No, it's not. But it's a start. In the galley, Patricia sat on a fold-down seat, her head in her hands. Her mind raced, trying to find a moment where she could have made a different choice. She'd known. Deep down, she'd known. She'd seen the boy struggling to breathe. She'd seen the fear. She'd heard the other passengers. But she'd been so sure these boys were wrong, that they were pretending, that they were trying to manipulate her. And so she'd chosen cruelty over compassion. Now she was going to lose everything. James appeared. He didn't say anything, just stared at her with profound disappointment. I didn't know, Patricia said quietly. I didn't know he was the CEO. Would it have mattered? James asked. Patricia opened her mouth to say yes, but the word died. Because the truth was she didn't know. Maybe she would have been kinder if she'd known who their father was. But that would have been just as wrong, because kindness shouldn't depend on status. "I lost my career tonight," Patricia said softly. James nodded. "You did, and you deserved to." The rest of the flight was quiet. Daniel stayed with his sons, telling them stories, helping them relax. Other passengers occasionally approached to express support. When the plane began its descent into Miami, Marcus looked out at the city lights. "Dad, are people always going to treat us like that?" Daniel wanted to say no, but he couldn't lie. "Some people will, not everyone, but some. There are people who are afraid of anything that challenges what they think they know. Which is why it's important that when you see someone being treated unfairly, you speak up. You fight back. You don't let the fear win. Like you did tonight. Like I did tonight." The plane touched down. Passengers began filing out. Daniel and his son stayed seated until the cabin was nearly empty. Patricia was still in the galley. She looked up as they passed, her eyes red and swollen. She opened her mouth to apologize, to beg. But no words came. Daniel didn't glance at her. But as Marcus passed, he paused. He looked at Patricia and in a quiet voice said, "I hope you learn to be better." Then he followed his father off the plane. 3 weeks later, Patricia sat in a windowless conference room in downtown Chicago with her lawyer facing 2 representatives from the Department of Justice. "Ms. Kendrick," the federal prosecutor began, "you understand why you're here today?" Patricia's mouth was dry. "You're investigating what happened on the flight." "We're investigating a potential hate crime, the deliberate denial of life-saving medical care to a minor based on racial animus." "I didn't deny him care because he was black. I just thought he was faking." The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. "You thought a 10-year-old was faking an asthma attack?" Patricia fell silent. The FBI agent leaned forward. "We've reviewed the videos. We've interviewed witnesses. We've spoken with 17 passengers. Would you like to know what they told us?" Torres continued. "They told us you immediately singled out the Carter twins, questioned their tickets, denied them water, refused basic services, humiliated them. We've subpoenaed your employment records," the prosecutor said. 15 prior complaints. 11 involved passengers of color. Every instance demonstrated a pattern of questioning credentials, withholding services, creating hostile environments. Patricia felt the walls closing in. "Those complaints were investigated." "No, they were dismissed. There's a difference." The prosecutor slid a document across the table. "This is a sworn statement from James Harding. He states you physically prevented him from retrieving the inhaler." Patricia's hands shook. "What happens now?" Her lawyer sighed. "They're going to charge you. Best case, we plead down to reckless endangerment. Probation, community service, maybe a year in county jail." "And worst case?" the prosecutor answered. "Worst case? Convicted on all counts. Child endangerment, assault, hate crime enhancements, 10 to 15 years in federal prison." Patricia whispered, "I didn't mean for this to happen." "But you did. And now you face the consequences. If you were in their parents' shoes facing a situation like this, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments." The trial began 6 months later. The courtroom was packed. Media crews lined the hallway. Protesters held signs. Patricia sat at the defense table, wearing a conservative suit. She'd lost weight. Her hair hung limp. She looked small, defeated. The prosecution called witnesses. James testified about Patricia's behavior. Passengers described the hostile environment. Medical experts explained how close Michael had been to unconsciousness. On the 4th day, Michael Carter took the stand. The 10-year-old walked to the witness stand in a blue shirt and clip-on tie. The prosecutor approached gently. "Michael, can you tell the jury what happened on March 15th? Michael's voice was quiet but steady. "We got on the plane, me and my brother. We had first-class tickets." "And what happened when you boarded?" Ms. Kendrick stopped us. She said we were in the wrong place. She didn't believe we had tickets for first class. The prosecutor walked Michael through the events: the denied water, the refused service, the worsening asthma. "What happened when you needed your inhaler?" Michael's eyes welled up. "My brother tried to get it, but she wouldn't let him. She closed the bin and walked away." "What were you feeling?" "I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was drowning, like my chest was being crushed. And I kept thinking I was going to die." Patricia buried her face in her hands. "What happened next?" "My brother pressed the call button. Ms. Kendrick came back. Marcus begged her to get my inhaler. And she did. But she wouldn't give it to me." "Why not?" "She said she couldn't give me medicine without authorization. She said the inhaler might be wrong. She said I was faking." The jury shifted uncomfortably. "How did you feel?" "Scared and angry, because I wasn't faking. I was dying, and she didn't care." "Thank you, Michael. No further questions." The defense attorney stood for cross-examination, but as he looked at the small boy, tears streaming down his face, he seemed to deflate. "No questions, Your Honor." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the judge looked at the jury foreman. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." "On the charge of child endangerment?" "Guilty." Patricia sobbed. "On the charge of assault?" "Guilty." "On the charge of reckless endangerment?" "Guilty." "And on the federal hate crime enhancement?" The foreman paused, looking at Patricia. "Guilty." The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel came down hard. Patricia collapsed onto the table. Her lawyer put a hand on her back but said nothing. Judge Winters addressed Patricia. "You will be remanded to federal custody immediately. Sentencing will be in 2 weeks." The bailiffs approached. Patricia stood, allowing them to place handcuffs on her wrists. As they led her past the gallery, she looked at Daniel and his sons one last time. Daniel's expression was unreadable. Marcus and Michael watched with eyes that had grown too old, too fast. Patricia wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, but the words wouldn't come. 2 weeks later, Patricia stood before Judge Winters for sentencing. The judge reviewed the report, then looked up. "Ms. Kendrick, you have been convicted of multiple felonies. The evidence showed a pattern of discriminatory behavior spanning over a decade. You abused your position to terrorize 2 innocent children." Patricia stared at the floor. "The law allows me to sentence you to up to 15 years. However, I must balance punishment with rehabilitation. Therefore, I am sentencing you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will complete 200 hours of community service with at-risk youth, and you will be permanently barred from working in the airline industry." 8 years. The bailiffs approached. As they led her away, she heard the judge's final words. "I hope you use this time to reflect, and I hope you emerge a better person." Federal Correctional Institution, Tallahassee. Patricia became inmate number 84,729 on a cold morning in January. The intake process was dehumanizing: strip search, delousing shower, ill-fitting uniform. A cell assignment shared with a woman serving time for fraud. The first night, Patricia lay on the thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. This was her life now. 8 years. In the beginning, she held on to anger. It wasn't fair, she told herself. She'd made a mistake. But as weeks turned to months, the anger eroded. Because in prison, There was a hierarchy, and child abusers sat at the bottom. The other inmates knew who she was. They'd seen the news. The harassment started small. Shoulder checks. Accidental spills. Whispered insults. But it escalated. One day, 3 months in, 2 women cornered her in the shower. One held her against the wall, while the other punched her in the stomach. Once, twice, 3 times, until Patricia crumpled to the floor. "That's for the kid," one hissed before walking away. After that, Patricia learned to keep her head down. She took early cafeteria shifts. She volunteered for the worst work details. She became invisible. And in that invisibility, something shifted. She started to see the other women around her. Really see them. Maria, serving 15 years for drug trafficking, who cried every night missing her daughter. Keisha, in for armed robbery, studying for her GED. Lynn, convicted of embezzlement, teaching a knitting class. These women weren't monsters. They were human beings who had made mistakes, who carried regrets, who were trying to survive. Just like Patricia. One evening, 6 months in, Patricia sat alone in the day room with a book in her lap, The New Jim Crow, thinking. She thought about Marcus and Michael, about the fear in their eyes, about the moment she'd walked away while Michael gasped for air. And for the first time, Patricia allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she'd done. Not the legal consequences, not the loss of her career, but the actual human harm. She had hurt a child, nearly killed him, and she'd done it deliberately because she couldn't see past her own biases. The tears came suddenly. Patricia covered her face and wept. A hand touched her shoulder. Keisha stood beside her. "You good?" Patricia shook her head. "No, I'm not good. I'm a terrible person." Keisha sat down. "Yeah, you probably are. But you got 8 years to work on that." "I don't know how." "Start by admitting what you did was wrong. Not to the judge. To yourself." "I hurt those boys." "You did." "I could have killed one of them." "You could have. And I did it because I'm—" Patricia's voice broke. "Because I'm racist." The word hung in the air. Keisha nodded. "That's a start. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in the story, and share your thoughts in the comments." Patricia began attending therapy sessions. A psychologist named Dr. Nina Patel met with her once a week. At first, Patricia resisted. She made excuses. Blamed the airline, blamed the pressure, blamed everything except herself. But Dr. Patel was patient. "Tell me about your childhood," she said during their 4th session. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Humor me," Patricia sighed. "I grew up in a small town in Indiana. Population 3,000. Almost everyone was white." "Did you have black friends growing up?" "There weren't any black families in our town." "What about in college?" "There were a few black students, but I didn't really know any of them." "Did you ever have a meaningful conversation with a black person before working for the airline?" Patricia opened her mouth to say yes, but the answer was no. "So your first real interactions with black people were as a flight attendant, in a position of authority over them?" "I guess so." "And what messages did you receive growing up about black people?" Patricia closed her eyes. She remembered her father muttering about those people, her mother clutching her purse tighter in black neighborhoods, the jokes, the stereotypes, the casual racism woven into her childhood. "I was taught to be afraid of them," Patricia admitted, "and fear often manifests as cruelty." While Patricia grappled with her demons, the world outside was changing. Skywing Airlines underwent a complete transformation. Daniel Westbrook kept his promise. Every employee completed comprehensive bias training. The complaint system was overhauled with independent oversight. The airline established a scholarship fund in Marcus and Michael's names for young people of color interested in aviation careers. First-class cabins were redesigned. The color scheme changed from navy blue to warm amber. Marketing materials featured diverse families. The changes were expensive. Some shareholders complained. A few board members resigned. But customer satisfaction soared. People wanted to fly with an airline that cared, that valued dignity over exclusivity. Within a year, Skywing's revenue increased by 18%. Daniel became something of a folk hero, a CEO who chose principles over profits. But he deflected the praise. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," he said in a 60 Minutes interview. "I just did what any father would do. I protected my children. The real question is, why didn't anyone else?" Marcus and Michael navigated their own complicated aftermath. The twins had become minor celebrities. Their story had been covered everywhere. They'd been invited to speak at conferences, to appear on talk shows. But the attention came at a cost. Marcus developed anxiety, nightmares about being trapped. He started therapy twice a week. Michael's asthma worsened. The trauma triggered psychosomatic symptoms. He carried his inhaler everywhere. They both struggled with trust. Every flight attendant, every stranger in uniform became a potential threat. Their father did everything he could. He found them the best therapists. He gave them space to grieve, to rage, to heal, and slowly they began to reclaim their lives. On the 1-year anniversary, Daniel sat down with his sons. "I want to ask you something. Do you want to keep flying, or would you rather find other ways to travel?" Marcus and Michael exchanged that wordless communication. "We want to keep flying," Marcus said. "Are you sure?" "We're sure," Michael interrupted. "We're not going to let her win. We're not going to let her fear become our fear." Daniel's eyes welled up. "I'm so proud of you both." That weekend, they booked a flight to New York, first class on Skywing. When they boarded, the flight attendant, a young black woman named Jasmine, greeted them with a warm, genuine smile. "Welcome aboard. Can I help you with your bags?" Marcus and Michael relaxed, just a little, and for the first time in a year, flying felt like freedom again. 5 years later. Patricia Kendrick stood outside a small apartment building in suburban Indianapolis. She was 57 now. Her hair was completely gray. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. She looked different from the woman who'd ruled first class. She was different. Prison had stripped away everything. But in the ruins, she'd built something new, something humbler, something better. She had a job now, working the early shift at a diner 2 blocks away. Minimum wage, no benefits. But the owner, Hector, believed in second chances. She made coffee. She took orders. She cleaned tables. She smiled at customers and meant it. It was honest work, humbling work, and she was grateful. Patricia set her keys on the counter and noticed an envelope on the floor. Someone had slipped it under her door. She opened it. Inside was a photocopy of a newspaper article. Carter Twins Keynote Youth Aviation Summit in London. Beneath the headline was a photo of Marcus and Michael at a podium, addressing hundreds. They looked confident, strong, whole. There was no note, just the article. Patricia stared at it for a long time. Then she carefully folded it and placed it in a drawer. That night, she wrote in her journal, "I saw a picture of them today. The boys. They're not boys anymore. They're young men. And they're thriving. I don't deserve to know that. I don't deserve to feel relief. But I do. I destroyed so much. I hurt so many people. And I can never undo that. But I can choose to be different. I can choose to do better. Every day I wake up and I choose to be someone who sees people, really sees them, instead of judging them. Someone who helps instead of hurts. I don't know if that's enough." It probably isn't, but it's all I have. She closed the journal and turned out the light. Tomorrow, she would wake up early and go to work. She would pour coffee and take orders. She would be kind to strangers. She would try to be better. It wouldn't erase what she'd done, but it was a start. 10 years after the incident. The conference room on the 43rd floor of Skywing Airlines headquarters had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. The view was spectacular, but Daniel Westbrook wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at his sons. Marcus and Michael were 20 now. They'd just graduated from college. Marcus with business administration, Michael with aerospace engineering. Both had commercial pilot licenses. Both had job offers from multiple airlines, and both had just been offered positions on the Skywing board of directors. "You don't have to accept," Daniel said, though hope colored his voice. "This is your decision." Marcus looked at Michael. Michael looked at Marcus. Then they both turned to their father and smiled. "We accept." Daniel's eyes welled up. "You're sure?" "We're sure," Michael said. "This airline changed because of what happened to us. We want to make sure it keeps changing, that it keeps getting better. We want to make sure no other kid goes through what we did," Marcus added. Daniel stood and pulled them both into a tight embrace. "Your mother would be so proud of you." "We know." When they pulled apart, Daniel cleared his throat. "Okay. First order of business. We have a proposal from the Diversity Committee. They want to establish a mentorship program for young pilots of color. $2 million annually." "Approved," both twins said immediately. Daniel laughed. "You didn't even hear the full proposal?" "Don't need to," Marcus said. "If it helps kids who look like us get into aviation, we're for it. This is going to be an interesting era for Skywing." Michael pulled out his phone. "I've been working on something. Can I show you?" He opened a design mock-up, new uniforms for flight attendants, vibrant, inclusive colors, sustainable materials, created in collaboration with crew members from diverse backgrounds. "It's beautiful," Daniel said. "It's more than that. It's a statement that we're moving forward, that we're leaving behind the old ideas of who belongs in the sky." Marcus leaned forward. "We've also been talking to older flight attendants, the ones who remember when things were different. Some have stories about discrimination they faced. We want to collect those stories, preserve them, make sure we don't forget." Daniel looked at his sons with profound respect. "You two have thought of everything, haven't you?" "We've had 10 years to think," Marcus said quietly. When the meeting ended, Daniel walked his sons to the elevator. "When I started this company, I just wanted to build something successful. I didn't think about legacy." "And now?" Michael asked. "Now I realize that success isn't about profit, margins. It's about the people you lift up, the lives you change, the world you leave behind." The elevator arrived. Marcus and Michael stepped inside. "See you at dinner, Dad." 7 o'clock. Don't be late." As the doors closed, Daniel stood alone in the hallway, watching the numbers descend. His sons had taken something horrific and used it to build something meaningful. They'd turned trauma into purpose, and that was true strength. What would you have done if you were in Marcus and Michael's position? Would you have been able to forgive, or would the pain have been too deep? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear from you on this one. That evening, in a small diner in Indianapolis, Patricia wiped down tables as the dinner rush wound down. She'd been promoted to shift manager 2 years ago, a small victory, but meaningful. The bell chimed. Patricia looked up to see a young woman enter. Maybe 25 black, dressed in a professional pantsuit with pilot's wings pinned to her lapel. "Hi there," Patricia said with a warm smile. "Just you tonight?" "Yes, ma'am." Patricia led her to a booth and handed her a menu. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" "Coffee, please, black." As Patricia poured the coffee, the woman stared at her with an odd expression. "Is everything okay?" Patricia asked. The woman hesitated. "This is going to sound strange, but are you Patricia Kendrick?" Patricia's heart stopped. Yes, I am. I thought so. I recognized you from the news, from the trial." Patricia set the coffee pot down carefully. "I understand if you want to leave." "No." The woman held up a hand. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to meet you." "Why?" "My name is Jasmine Williams. I'm a flight attendant for Skywing. I started 5 years ago, right after the company overhauled its training." Patricia's hands trembled. "I see. The training was intense. They didn't just teach us safety protocols. They taught us about bias, about empathy, about seeing passengers as human beings first." She paused. "They taught us about you." Patricia looked down. "I'm sure they used me as an example of what not to do." "They did. But they also used your story to show us why the training matters. Why it's not enough to just follow rules. We have to interrogate our own assumptions. I'm glad they're teaching that now. I wish someone had taught me." "Did you learn? After everything?" Patricia met Jasmine's eyes. "I'm trying to, every day. I don't know if I'll ever be the person I should have been, but I'm trying to be better than I was." Jasmine nodded. "That's all any of us can do." When Jasmine finally left, she left a generous tip and a small note on a napkin. "Keep trying. It matters." Patricia stood in the empty diner, holding the napkin, and cried. Not from sadness, from something that felt almost like hope. 20 years after the incident. Marcus Carter stood at the gate of Miami International Airport watching passengers board a Skywing flight to Sao Paulo. He was 30 now, CEO of Skywing after his father's retirement. Michael was Chief Operating Officer, overseeing day-to-day operations. Together, they'd transformed the airline into one of the most respected in the industry, not just for safety or service, but for its commitment to equity, inclusion, and human dignity. Every new hire went through extensive bias training. Every complaint was investigated thoroughly. Every passenger was treated with respect. The industry had noticed. Other airlines adopted similar policies. The FIO implemented new regulations based on Skywing's model. Change was slow, but it was happening. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Board meeting in 20. Don't be late." Marcus smiled and headed toward the executive offices. As he walked through the terminal, he passed a statue installed 5 years earlier. It depicted 2 young boys sitting side by side, looking up at the sky. The plaque read, "In memory of all children who have faced injustice. May we build a world where they feel safe to fly." Marcus paused in front of it, as he often did. He thought about that night on Flight 817. The fear, the helplessness. He thought about Patricia Kendrick. He wondered where she was now. He hoped she'd found peace, because carrying hatred was exhausting. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean what she'd done was okay. But it meant choosing not to let her actions define the rest of his life. It meant reclaiming his power. And as Marcus Carter walked into the boardroom, surrounded by colleagues who respected him, leading a company that embodied his values, he realized something important. He was free. Patricia Kendrick had tried to cage him in her prejudices, but he'd broken free, and now he was soaring. This story is a reminder that prejudice isn't just a flaw, it's a force that destroys lives. Patricia Kendrick thought her position gave her authority to judge, to withhold, to punish. But she forgot that power without humanity is just cruelty. She looked at 2 young boys and saw only their skin color. She couldn't see their humanity, their fear, their right to dignity. And that blindness nearly cost a child his life. But this story is also about resilience, about two boys who refused to let hatred define them, who chose to transform their trauma into purpose, who built something better from the ashes of injustice. Marcus and Michael Carter could have let that night destroy them. Instead, they used it to change an entire industry, to make sure no other child would face what they faced, to create a world where the color of your skin doesn't determine whether you're treated with kindness or cruelty. That's the power of choosing courage over fear, of choosing compassion over hatred, of choosing to build instead of destroy. If this story moved you, if Marcus and Michael's journey resonated with you, I'd be incredibly grateful if you take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Justice Stories. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need to hear them. And please share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what struck you most about this story. Tell me about times you've witnessed injustice, or moments when you chose to stand up. I read every single comment, and your perspectives help shape the stories we tell here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and thank you for believing that change is possible. One story, one choice, one act of courage at a time. Until next time, this is Justice Stories.